Namaste and a very warm welcome to you on Sarva Gunn Sampann. Thank you so much for joining me for yet another podcast where I have an opportunity to bring women of India and the Indian diaspora onto this platform to showcase and spotlight their remarkable journeys. My guest today is a woman who values making informed choices and living by them. One of her biggest strengths is prioritizing activities. Please join me in welcoming Shilpi Sawrikar to Sarva Gunn Sampann. Shilpi, it's great to have you. How are you?
Good. Thank you, Anu, for inviting me to Sarva Gunn Sampann. It's an honor to be here and to be sharing my experiences. And I hope the small set of life experiences I've had being in India as well as being here in the US, I hope they can help folks in your audience that are moving countries or moving locations and are thinking about as a whole what their careers in life should look like.
Absolutely. I'm really excited and looking forward to jumping into the conversation with our first segment, which is Bachchpan Ke Din. It's all about your childhood. And here I'd love to take you back in time and help us learn about what growing up years were like. So let's get started with that.
Okay. So thinking back, when it came to my schooling years, we moved around a bit. My father was in Indian Railways, so we moved cities and locations. Fortunately for me, they settled in Hyderabad, and we stuck to Hyderabad for a good 10 years. So all my schooling was in Hyderabad, largely in Hyderabad. But prior to that, when I look back at my elementary school, we used to have UKG, LKG in those days. So that was all in Delhi. So that's where I started at YMCA in Delhi. And from there, my father was posted in a small town in southern part of India, Guti. We were there for a few years. So I finished till my 4th grade, and then we moved to Hyderabad, and I was there starting 5th grade on. And all the rest of my schooling was in Hyderabad. Even beyond that, I was lucky. The location had engineering college, so continued on there to do my undergrad in the same location. So that worked out very well for me, being in that same location, having the stability. And I'm really grateful to my parents to have provided that to us.
So you must have been a great student to get into engineering college. And I believe it's also not that easy to get into that school. So talk to me a little bit about how you decided to take up engineering.
Growing up, given the location where I was, Hyderabad, India, I think most of the trend in those days for students that were doing well at school was to do either medicine or engineering. So a lot of choices, I think, got made because of what we saw as trends and what we saw our peer set doing, which is similar to, I think, even now, depending on where you go, I think peer set makes a lot of difference. So a lot of my peers were looking at engineering as an option. So I decided to try for that. In fact, in my 11th grade, I'd taken MPBC, which is, both math and biology, keeping my options open till finally I narrowed in on enjoying the engineering. I can go a little bit back, I think back to the 80s, the growing up days of my life. I would say I was a really talkative kid. And I always worked towards, talking with my father, my mother, my siblings. That was one of my ways to spend time with them. We had a couple of games, game boards we used to play at home. So that was there. And then I also had access to the resources within the colony because my father was in Indian Railways. I got an opportunity to utilize the facilities there. So it came with a swimming pool. There was a club with a swimming pool, badminton, table tennis, you name it. We didn't have coaches, but we did have all the facilities. So we would go and play a lot. So during my elementary years, I was doing a lot of being outdoors. I think I would get back from school and I would, the first thing I did my homework, which luckily for me, my friends did the same. So they would do the homework and we would call each other and get together, usually at the Railway Officers Club. And then we just hung out there till the sun was setting. And then we would get back home and we used our bikes for it. So in those days, I think we couldn't rely. Parents were busy with their things. So we would come back. But I remember being really talkative with everybody, whether it was at the club, school, home. And I think that also helped me not just share my ideas, but pick up on things, nuances in culture, understand the world through their eyes as well. So the growing up experiences that my parents had, for example, were very different. But I was always very curious about their childhoods, what they ran into, and how they grew up. And I was always curious about my grandparents as well. So I think all of that helped me. And if you remember in those days, I think we had some nice shows, Rajini and Varle Ki Duniya. Those were the two that really resonated with me. I know there were a lot others, but those two I loved watching. I think it was it is a good way being in a government service. I think my father provided that good stability to all of us, and it helped move it forward. But at the same time, I think when you think about being good at studies, a lot of people think that comes because you're just smart. I think it's also the environment that makes a lot of difference. And given that my father was in Indian Railways, I was really away from a lot of my extended family. The focus was just really my parents, and they had ample time to focus on us and our studies. And that, in fact, helped me overall, I think, be successful at school. I wanted to be successful at school, and that helped me provide that environment. So I think the circumstances make a lot of difference in what you do and how you do. And I think all of that helped me. So when you say, what made you get into engineering, I wouldn't want to just credit the fact that, well, I knew how to do it and I got into it. A lot of credit goes to the circumstances where I was, the location I was, the environment I was in, and the opportunities that provided me.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense, because down south, I think those were the most obvious career choices, right? To become a doctor or an engineer. But of course, what you say is absolutely right. I totally agree. It's the environment that shapes you overall. And
Yes.
on that note, we'll move on to our next segment, which is Ye Kahaan Gaye Hum. This is your onward journey, and would love to learn what happened after you finished your high school. And it's all the way till present day.
Yeah. So I think to a very large degree, I've come to I think appreciate that a lot of things are beyond our control. So being here in the Northeast, it was not a choice I made, a deliberate choice I made. It so happened that we are here. So going through the journey, while I feel like there were choices I made along the path, after my engineering, I decided I would get into and do MBA. Again, it was not something that, that I picked because I was trying to be different. It was something that was being done by my peer set. So the folks that were there, I think a lot of them went to the US. They wanted to do their masters. Several of them decided they would live in India and work towards, their masters in India. And I decided I would do it in India. So a lot of people, similar kind of mindsets, we work towards it. And a setback was that the first time I had written my MBA exam, I did not make the cut. So at that time, I wanted to start working, but the job I had was also in Delhi. So I decided to then move back. I didn't want to go to Delhi and work. My parents were in Hyderabad. I wanted to continue there. So then I looked around in Hyderabad and found a place. Those days were really young days, still trying to figure out what I wanted to do in life. And then I think I did make the cut the second time around, and went to IIM Calcutta. From there, though, again, the choice was not primarily to be coming here to the Northeast in America. There were options. In fact, my choices were to stay back in India and, be with my family. I was very close to my parents, so I wanted to continue being there. I loved being with my extended family. I would loved to be in India. But it so happened that there was a company in the Northeast that offered me a job, and I happened to speak with Nachiketa. He's my husband now, but in those days we were dating. So he and I had a long discussion, and we finalized that we would be here in the Northeast. It was just an opportunity. It was not a life decision. We did not realize that it was a life decision we were making, but it was just an opportunity. My first job. Let's try a new place. But since we have moved here, we have always been here. So at that point, I thought a lot of things that happen in our life are really not things we may decide upon, but happen. But once you've made your choices, so once we've had our discussions and made our choices, we live by them. So we learn to be happy by them. I don't go back trying to analyze and super analyze why something happened or did not happen. So they would, but at that time, I had started thinking a lot about destiny and how some things just fall in place. Also fell together with the fact that I'd found my husband at that point in time. And again, it was a surprise. It was not, again, deliberate. So a lot of things that were happening at that time in my life were felt more like magic than a planned course of action that I was venturing on. So everything smooth, hunky-dory. I come to the US, and it was really a setback at that point, again, that I suffered because the economy was crashing. The first few years were challenging for me here to be in the US because I think year 2000, a couple of things happened together. It was a very big change. I got married. I moved to the US, and it was my first job that I was starting. I think there was no grooming to be here in the Northeast. So it was a cultural, I think, adjustment that I was going through. But it was interesting. I think all of that helped set me up for what I did later in life. I may not have realized it at that point, but I think a lot of things that happened in my first 4 years here in the Northeast helped drive how I started to view things. I learned a lot. It was in a very short amount of time. I had to pick up a lot of different things, and it came together. And by 2005, I had started feeling more settled. And starting that time, again, that was a different phase of life, I would say. I have 2 daughters, as you know, Anu, and my husband. So I was venturing on a new path. And again, magic, I had 2 daughters, things coming together. So I think a lot of life choices we make, some maybe choices that are made in a very, very informed and deliberate way. But I feel there are a lot of things that happen to us based on the opportunities that come our way. And we tend to pick things based on our priorities at that point in time. And I think it's up to us after that to live by our choices. And I think one of the things I continue to tell myself is at any point in time, try to always think of what is the right choice I want to make with the information I have, or you seek more information, but you got to make a choice as of that point in time, but don't go back and analyze it further. So that's been kind of my mantra all through my career, as well as raising my daughters.
Yeah, well said. The choices we make dictate the lives we lead, and a certain amount of intuition and judgment also factors in, right, when you're making a choice. But accepting that and saying, I'll play the hand that's been dealt to me is exactly what wisdom is all about. And that's exactly what sets the course for where you go on from that point. So awesome. We'll move on to our next segment, and that is Kaam Ki Baat. This is about your work. So love to learn about what is it that you do? How did you land your first gig in the US? Talk to me about any future progressions within your industry. Did you stick with the first employer? Where are you now? What do you do? And so it's a lowdown on all the things that you do at work.
Yeah, sure, Anu. So like I mentioned, I was fortunate because we had some companies come to our campus in India and pick students from the campus. So my first job here in the US was an opportunity that I got through the campus interview. And they sponsored my moving here to the US. And I got married in India, moved here to the US. And then, like I said, the first few years was a big learning curve and also an adjustment, being here in the Northeast. And I think starting 2004-ish, things started to fall in place. Also because we got our permanent residency. So that helped a lot in terms of adjustment and the opportunities that open out with permanent residency. So my passion was always finance and technology. So that convergence continued on. I worked with John Hancock Financial Services for 7 years, after which I moved on to State Street Bank, which is where I'm currently working. And I've been there now for over 12 years. I'll be finishing 13 years in June at State Street Bank. Again, different roles. Every role came with its own challenges and opportunities. I would say the biggest thing you learn about working once you're on that path over a period of time. So I think it took me some time to figure things out. But I think the biggest aspect of working is knowing what you want to do and prioritizing and being able to say no to things that are not your priority. So my mantra always is, if you don't pick your opportunities, others will pick it for you. So if you can figure out what you want to do, then you have to say no to the other things and continue on the path that works best for you. Now, not always easy because a lot of times you may want to do something and it may not come by. So you make the best of what is available. It's a matter of demand supply. So what you're doing also has to be marketable and there has to be a demand for what you would want to do. But along with that, I think it's also a matter of making your choices as you go down the path. And I think beyond that, it's also a matter of what's coming your way. I think after I settled in my job in 2004, 2005, I was a long-term employee. As you can see, I was with John Hancock for a good 7 years and being here in State Street. For me, it was a lot about the people I worked with. They're like my family. You're spending 8 hours of your day with them. So you have to enjoy, working with them. I always appreciated that aspect of it more than the work itself, about the people, what made them click, what was good for them, what could I do to help them, and how all of us being in the same boat to try to reach the outcomes. So it was all about how do we all go together in this. And I think that was something I enjoyed doing in John Hancock. And then even with my career at State Street, it was all about how do we all go together, be successful, hit our milestones. There was an opportunity that I got, I would say about 7 years back, that changed my course a little bit, helped me, I think, contribute a lot more. And I changed my profile as well. So originally I was in software delivery as a delivery manager. So I started my career working in software development back in, I would say, right at the very beginning in 2000. I was doing a little bit of consulting in the beginning, and then I did a little bit of sales. Then I also did a little bit of, and then I started off in working core. In John Hancock, I started working in their software technology division, and all my roles, starting, working on testing, business analysis, all of that was software. And then I moved into project management, program management, and in State Street as well. I was working as a delivery manager on software delivery. But back around, I would say 7 years back, I got an opportunity to get into a more of a chief of staff role for a division, a technology division in State Street. I would say I consider that more as magic than anything else. It was not something I was seeking. I was very happy with what I was doing, but that was an opportunity, I think, that came about. Somebody had noticed what I was doing and how I was doing it and wanted me to contribute there. So I moved on to being a chief of staff for that particular division. And from there on, my current role, I'm working as a COO for the technology division. It's a global application development division. We have offices all across in APAC, EMEA, and in the US. Most countries, you can think of the big ones, Sydney, in Japan, China, and in EMEA as well. We have UK and Germany and Luxembourg, France, other locations. And we also have operations here in the US. So it's been interesting. And I think challenging at the same time, but I've loved this particular role because in the CEO role, you're essentially working to elevate everybody in what they do and in trying to, meet your outcomes and key results. With contributions from across the group and finding niches where everybody gets an opportunity to shine. So one of my mantras, when I look at work itself is and people, because they are the most important aspect of working, is that you have to allow everybody to shine in their strengths. So I focus more on strengths than on weaknesses. I know there's a lot of focus in the corporate world on doing performance reviews and highlighting areas that people can improve, doing trainings and such. And all of that is well and good. But there could be certain aspects of personality that make you a person. You may enjoy doing certain types of work and may not enjoy doing other types of work. I consider it as allowing you to shine in the areas that you enjoy doing. And you can, technically, you can look at that as an area you want to prosper and do well, versus focusing on the weaknesses, which you could try to improve. But I think in many cases, it's also a matter of what a person wants to do, their native behavior and the areas that they really enjoy. So if a weakness is tied to an area that you are really not into, then that's not something you want to shine in. So for example, you can't take an introvert and convert the person into an extrovert. And along the same lines, you don't want to take an extrovert and convert into an introvert. So there are some of those aspects you have to be mindful of. So I think that's something I really look at. Letting people do what they best enjoy, because it's 8 hours a day we spend in our work lives, and we should be enjoying what we're doing.
Fair enough. That sounds very equitable when you're meeting people where they are and really, going off from their strengths rather than their weaknesses. So talk to me a little bit about what are some of the skills that you think that you will be working on as a COO in the coming years, especially now that we are, head on into the world of AI?
It's a very interesting question, and I think that's the buzzword in this day and age. I am personally very excited about artificial intelligence. I think we've seen a lot of innovation come through our days. I think growing up in the 80s and the 90s, seeing the Walkman go away, being on the internet, then getting into the cloud, seeing how that revolutionizes the way we manage our technology infrastructure. Now with the AI that's coming in, the potential for doing a lot more for this world is out there, available at our fingertips. It's the way we use AI that's going to make all the difference. We have to be able to responsibly have the boundaries on how we leverage AI in our world. There's a lot of talk about the bad that comes with AI. I think given the power of what it can be doing, we have to be careful about that. And I think the best way to mitigate any harm that can come is to do it through the good that comes from AI. So we have to put AI to work against the evils of AI. Humans trying to work in that domain is going to be harder, because we are going to be the pace at which the AI operates is mind-boggling. So we need the testing, the responsibility of looking at the bad characters also being handled by AI. So it happens at that same rate that happens at the other end. So there is a lot. I'm very hopeful of the potential. I think a similar, when we found the nuclear energy, the fission fusion reactions and such, there was a lot of talk about how we could be responsibly using it and solving the electricity problems of the world, and also the bad. And I think we have to be mindful that we use it in a really responsible way.
I think you've pretty much summed up the skill sets that you'll be needing. So I think responsibility is definitely one of them. And so is strategy. Those are two things so far. I don't see AI doing that, because That's a very conscious decision that humans can make regarding where they want to see the business go, right? So that's great. All right. So thank you so much for sharing that information about what you do, and also painting a nice picture out there for our viewers and our audience to understand a little bit about where things are heading. We'll move on to our next segment from here, which is X Factor, and this is all about your personality. What is it that you do outside of work, and any special interests that you have?
I see myself as having different roles and jobs at different points in my life. So going back to even say 10 years, I would say I had a role at work, and I also had another job as a full-time mom. At this point, I have teenagers. So the amount of time I now have to myself is a lot more. I think with the last few years, it has freed up a lot of my time to myself. I think now I do find a lot of personal time and space that I can explore my interests. I started to read a lot. That was something I'd done a couple of decades back. I used to love reading, and I've gotten back into reading books, and that's my way of finding my me time. I know.
Any favorite books that come to mind that you've read in the recent past?
I think the one I enjoyed in January, I'm going to go back to January, that was The Rosie Project. That it was an interesting book. I'm a lot into fiction, not as much nonfiction, although that's an area where I'm looking to get into as well.
Okay, we'll now move on to a final segment, Shilpi. It's been great chatting with you. We're going to get into self-care. And here I want to know, what is it that you do to take care of yourself at the 4 levels that I talk about, mental, physical, emotional, and spiritual. So I know reading is something that you do for yourself, that's your favorite hobby, pastime. But what else do you do to take care of yourself, given these 4 parameters?
So I focus heavily on food, nutrition. So it's been, I'm a vegetarian, so I don't eat any meat or fish. In fact, I also don't eat as much eggs. I do have, cakes, pastries, but usually I avoid omelets and such. So that's been a big area of focus, to make sure that you are, as a vegetarian, able to get the nutrition. And working outside the house also means that you don't have as much time to cook by yourself at home. So I focus heavily on, I think, salads, fruits, vegetables, nuts, and feeding, finding ways to pick snacks that don't take much time to cook at home. So a lot of things in my house, if I look at my pantry, usually this time of the year, I have almost always have bananas, apples, oranges, and I would have like all kinds of different kinds of nuts, cashew nuts, peanuts, pista, all kinds of quick snack items that I can have without having to cook. I have, over a period of time, heavily reduced my time to prepare meals. Also because that helps me, get some time to myself, free up the schedule, get a lot of, free up capacity in my schedule to do other things. So that's one big focus area. The other area, I think you talked about the mind. What do I do for that? And I like to pray. So I try to find time every day if I can, not much, but just a few minutes to think of, everything that's going on in life, and thank God for what opportunities I'm getting, and thank God for taking care of myself, and also ask for ways of doing the right thing, right? I think all of us want to find the right path. I think we all have different paths in life, and trying to make the right choices. So I think that's one thing I'm really grateful for, and I continue to ask, to show me the right way to lead my life and to make the right choices.
That really helps a lot. I mean, walking away with an insight like prioritizing what you do in life and especially the choices that you make is something we can all definitely learn from and benefit from. So, Shilpi, I want to thank you so much for taking your time on a Saturday afternoon and giving me this opportunity to have this conversation with you, get an overview, a 360-degree overview of your life, your personality, the choices you've made, and how you're living by those choices in such a great way. So it's definitely an inspiration, and I want to thank you for joining me. I wish you all the very best with everything that's going on and that's coming up. But thanks once again.
Thank you, Anu. Thank you for having me here on the show.